There you go. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, for those not holding a phone right now, I want you to make some noise if you're excited. Y'all ready to do it? Make some noise. Come on now. There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome today's moderator from Billboard, Alex Gale, and today's guest, Panic at the Disco's Brendon Urie.
Not that we didn't just meet backstage, but whatever.
We have to fake it for the... Oh, yeah. What's going on? Hi, guys. Hi.
Are you guys here to see Brendon? Is that what's going on? Cool. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So you've had a really long day. What time did you wake up today?
I woke up at 3 a.m. actually, and we had a 4 a.m. lobby call.
Yeah. Good Morning America.
Yeah. It was Good Morning America. It was phenomenal, though. It was good.
What did you guys watch? Some. Okay. Good.
Yeah, you saw it?
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so Death of Bachelor, big day for you. Obviously, the album's out. Tour with Weezer was just announced, so it's really a banner day. And this is the first album that's officially, or not officially, sort of de facto a solo album. It's now just down to you, and it sort of had been going in that direction. But what's that like to really this be 100% your vision?
To be completely honest, it's very liberating. It's so different, you know, when you're working with 3 other people. You know, there's a lot of compromise. It's almost like you're married to these people because you with each other every day. You know how to push each other's buttons. You know, like what ideas you want, what you don't want. There's a lot of compromise that happens. And this time around, not a lot of compromise. I was able to do exactly what I wanted. My vision was realized perfectly, and it just made me so excited. And I just honestly had a really good time writing. I spent a lot of time producing tracks and just writing songs, and it was amazing.
Did you ever miss any of like the back and forth or the camaraderie, or I guess it's offset by, you know, being able to see your vision through?
Yeah, I mean, luckily there's still some back and forth, but I get to delegate, you know, I get to facilitate the whole back and forth. Now that it's just me, I get to, you know, work with friends that I want to. It's not like I have to go and co-write a song or do stuff like that. It's really up to me, which is a lot of fun. It's almost dangerous because there's no limitations, but that just makes it exciting.
What are some of the influences, or just you know, musically, or just in terms of your vision, that were held back a little before? Not blaming it on anyone, but just, you know, now that's out of the box.
Yeah, now I mean, I'm influenced by so many different artists, and now I get to realize it. You know, with bands like Queen or a singer like Frank Sinatra, Bruce Springsteen. I was listening to a lot of hip hop too. Like I'm infatuated with the "To Pimp a Butterfly" Kendrick album. It's just phenomenal. Yeah. And yeah, so I was listening to a lot of different stuff, but I wanted to make sure to more sonically use that influence, whereas before it would just be an inspiration to write in general. Now I was using it in ways where there's a couple songs, for instance, where I was basically just stealing ideas from Queen. Nothing melodically, so I wouldn't get sued, but it was ideas where, you know, bridges where I'm stacking my own vocal and I'm playing different characters every time, and I'm doing like 38 voices of myself. It was just so bizarre. And when I listen back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember doing that voice. It's kind of funny. It's cool.
Yeah, on this album in general, it seems like you really let you liberate your voice. That's one of the big things I'd say. And you've always been seen as an excellent singer, but this time it's like you really got to put it out there. There's songs where it's stripped down to just piano and vocals. Yeah. What was that like as a singer to finally be able to just belt out like that?
It's amazing. Like as time goes by, I want to just improve, as you know. As always, I want to get better as an artist, as a songwriter, as a producer, as a vocalist. So I was pushing myself to do things that maybe in the past I would have been a little more reserved about, being you know, nervous that, oh, I don't know if I can sing that live. Just like, well, I recorded it, so I'm gonna have to sing it live. I would just wanted to push myself in that direction, and that was another liberating thing. It was great.
And you don't hear a lot of Sinatra when it comes to rock today. There's not a lot of Sinatra influence in there.
Yeah. Well, I think he hated rock and roll. I think he said that, which is the most punk rock thing to say. Like, that's awesome.
Right. It's almost kind of ironic now that he's, you know, being incorporated into a rock band. Then, you know.
Yeah. He's rolling over in his grave right now. He's like, oh, jeez.
How'd you get into him?
When I was a kid, over the holidays, like my parents would play him, you know, just while we were hanging out at home. The first song I heard from him, actually, I think was Jingle Bells. It was like the Jingle bells. It was like the funny, quirky one. And from that point, the next time I heard him was on Who Framed Roger Rabbit when he was a cartoon sword. That was like one of the first memories. I remember seeing him. He's just like, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, there's a movie called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And they used Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft and they draw him as a cartoon, and he's got the little hair curl, he's like boo 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 boo, he's like doing the whole thing, and it's awesome. And I remember just being like, who is that dude that they like emulated through a sword as a cartoon? And then from that point on, I was just in love. But I didn't gain a real respect until I got older, and I was a vocalist myself, or considered myself somewhat of a vocalist. That's when I really gained a deep appreciation and respect for what he was able to accomplish, not only musically, but just as an individual, as a man, just as a person, just how kind he was and charitable, and what he stood for, I really backed.
And how did hip-hop and Kendrick Lamar actually find its way into the album? Like, when you listen back, where do you hear it?
Oh man, it's mostly in beats. So like, the good thing about songwriting for me now, like when I'm doing it alone, I tend not to spend too much time on one idea, because then I don't want to get stale in the idea that I'm writing. And I actually learned that from a previous producer I worked with, Butch Walker, and he taught me, Butch Walker's great, and he taught me that, if you spend too much time, the song's gonna suffer. And I never thought about it. I just figured the more time I spend on a song, it's only gonna get better. But really, you can end up hurting it because you lose excitement over the song. And to keep that excitement, when I would lose, the passion for it or get frustrated, I would just go and like make a beat. So making the beats, I was listening to a lot of modern production, and it was just a lot of hip-hop inspired stuff. I mean, a lot of pop nowadays is just hip-hop inspired stuff, and there's no rules. I was really inspired by the fact that it's kind of carte blanche for chaos in hip-hop. There's like, there's nothing you have to do to make it hip-hop, and that's what makes it hip-hop. I just love that idea, so I wanted to use that.
Cool. Is there going to be a Brendon Urie beat tape?
Yeah, DJ Beaton, what up? Mixtape's fire, son.
Yeah. And speaking of Kendrick, we just got to talk about the Grammys for a second. So, obviously it's incredible. He was nominated for so many. And what do you think? Like, do you think he's going to be able to pull off a bunch of wins? Obviously, Taylor is.
Dude, it's Weeknd, it's Taylor Swift, it's Ed Sheeran, it's Kendrick. I mean, it's tough. He's got some competition, and I love all of those artists. I think they're just immensely talented. So I don't know. I mean, for me, that was my favorite album besides Taylor Swift's album. I mean, that was just like the songwriting ability. But with Kendrick, it was not only the songwriting, it was the way he used it. I mean, there's songs where he's doing freestyle jazz as a different character over a jazz track, like an old like big band. Like, who does that, dude? That's like the coolest idea. And to push the boundaries like that, I think is a huge symbol of how much further he's going to go, and that's just exciting for me as a fan. Right.
And you mentioned all those big nominees. There's no rock acts in there.
Right.
And, and rock is in, people have, this has been spoken about many times, rock is in sort of a weird place in some ways. It's not hugely commercially successful right now. It's not making noise in the Grammys. Right. But you always are a success. You're always not just doing it, but also having commercial success at it. So what do you think about the state of rock right now and where it's at, and why it's not where it was once?
I like that it's moving in a different direction, but there's other acts I like more than others, There's like the Tame Impala album I really like.
Yeah, it's
I
amazing.
think Kevin Parker is just a phenomenally talented guy, and he's doing stuff not to be big, he's doing stuff to be original, and I think that, in turn can give you success. I think that is success, when you're doing something no one else is doing to build a name for yourself over something you have such a passion for. That's so freeing. There's nothing better than that. It's like the whole reason I got in a band and wanted to do this is I didn't want anybody to tell me what to do, and B, I wanted to just create something original content, Right.
And that's another album that has heavy hip-hop influences all over it. And
Totally.
Beats and,
I mean, even on the Mark Ronson album, when like Daffodils, that song that Kevin Parker's on, it could be a Tame Impala song. Right. It's just Mark Ronson put a stamp on it, so it's even bigger, thank goodness. But it's just, I don't know, man. Like, there are people that give me hope, and that's why I never get too discouraged, because where, if I happen to like a band and they don't do the thing I thought they were going to do, there's always an act out there that keeps it exciting, where I'm never too discouraged. It's awesome.
And they're another rock act that's also just, it's Kevin Parker doing everything, even though it seems like it's sort of a band.
Yeah.
It's actually just him.
Yeah.
So, and when they go out on the road, when he goes out on the road, he has a band with them. So how do you plan on taking what was sort of a solo act in some ways and bring it to the road now with, with new people?
Totally. It's like when I'm writing in the studio, I'm always thinking of the live show. It doesn't necessarily dictate what the song is, but I like to think of the energy for the tours coming up, for shows coming up. And in order to tour, it took me years to get this, but you need to get along with the people in your band. Like, you can't, it creates such a weird energy on stage that it becomes harder to deal with. So I just ended up hiring some buddies. Like hey man, you want to come out on tour? And you got a free year, and then there's, I got, a couple months here and there. So it works out that way, but I am always thinking of live show because it's just so important to me, the visual aspect and the live aspect of this band.
Right. And what does it mean to you to be touring with Weezer? I mean, that's an amazing announcement.
No, it's like, spit take for real. Dude, it's like, that was so crazy. The first time I met Rivers, it was like 7 years ago. And this is just as like we had our first split in the band, like a lot of stuff was happening. And I wanted to get out more. I wanted to do co-writes, which I had never done before. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone because deep down I knew that was the only way to progress and move forward. So to get out of my comfort zone, I was just a real like recluse. I just stayed in my house. I didn't want to go out. I hated talking to people. I got panic attacks in grocery stores. Still happens. But I think like going and meeting Rivers for like my first co-write was one of the coolest experiences because meeting an idol, they say, don't meet your idols. I say, forget that, dude. It's awesome. This guy brought me into his home, showed me around his house. He does the Japanese thing. I took my shoes off. I was very respectful. And we just walked around a little bit, and then that was like a 10-minute tour of his house. And he's like, let's go back to the studio and work on something. So we just walk out to his studio, excuse me, and halfway through the writing the song, I just was like, listen, dude, it's eating me up inside. I have to tell you, I learned to play drums and guitar to the Blue Album in Pinkerton. Like, you are just an idol of mine, and I respect you so dearly. All right, weirdness over. Let's get back to the song. And he was like, no. Let's sit with this for a little bit. That's really great. And I was like, oh God, this is awkward. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. And I was like, oh no. But like sitting with him and being able to communicate as just one human to another, there's mutual respect. Was really, really cool. And then from that point on, just seeing him here and there, playing festivals with him, and becoming friends over time. That's so surreal. It doesn't seem real still, but this tour is gonna be amazing, man. Yeah.
How validating is that for you? I mean, I feel like every artist, there's a lot of confidence, but there's always a little part of you, and any creative person, you're like, okay, wait, am I doing this right? But then to be touring with Weezer, I mean, what is that actually? Is that just huge validation for you when you think about yourself as a kid and,
100%. I must have done something really good in a past life to get to this point because I never thought that would be possible. I mean, I never thought of that. It was, like we came from different worlds, in a different scene. I never thought we'd connect. And now that it's come full circle, very just unbelievably awesome. We can't really put it into words. It's just a beautiful thing, yeah.
Is there anything different that fans can expect on this tour?
Oh, yeah. I've got a lot of tour production ideas. That's something I really spend a lot of time on. Like after the album, yesterday or today is like the sigh of relief day. I'm just like, oh, it's finally all out. It's like I've been sitting on the secret for months, and now I can just share it with everyone. And then I move forward thinking about tour ideas, and it gets dangerous sometimes because I want to do a little too much. I wouldn't say too much. I want to do what I want to do, and the label says it's too much because I have like ideas where some of it's dangerous, and apparently, yeah. So I'll share a couple ideas. So the first idea I told the label, I was like, hey, so I want to put a safety net above the crowd. And they're like, okay, good start. For what? And they just didn't see where this was going. Safety net above the crowd kind of hangs a little low, and I want to shoot myself out of a cannon from stage. And I want to fly up into the air and land on the safety net and kind of float down and like be able to high five people and then kind of float back up and then have something pick me up and then bring me back to stage. And they were like, well, apart from impracticality, that sounds incredibly dangerous, and no one's going to take out an insurance policy on you, and we won't suffer that consequence. So they're like, no. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be back to you in a week with another idea. So I went back to them later. I was like, here's my next idea, guys. And they're like, oh, Jesus. And I was like, well, I want to, there's a part in the song that says, set yourself on fire. Can I get a... Yeah, exactly. I was like, can I get a fire suit? Can we get fire gel? I want to be on fire the entire song. He's like, nope. That's just not a thing. Like, you're not going to do it. So that's where I started, but I'm still talking about ideas. So if you can imagine, that's where I started. I'm going to find some good middle ground to land on, Yeah.
Maybe just a leg on fire.
Yeah, maybe just a toe. Set a toe on fire.
And speaking of theatricality, I mean, obviously everyone's still talking about that the impact and the death of David Bowie, which just like tore everyone apart. And just when I hear your music, and definitely when you're talking about the stage show, that's a lot of Bowie influence, I would suspect. So if you could just tell us what Bowie meant to you and what his music and visuals meant to you.
Definitely, David Bowie meant a lot to me from the time I was a kid to now, and the first time he was on my radar, again, was a movie. I was a big movie buff as a kid. I just watched a lot of films, spent a lot of time alone. And was watching Labyrinth, and after seeing that, I wanted to be Jareth the Goblin King. I wanted to be him. I was like, there's nobody cooler. There's no more beautiful man. He is just awesome. And knowing that he could sing, I was like, who is this guy? And I was like 6 years old at the time. I was like, who is this dude? And then, listening to Hunky Dory and getting into, Space Oddity and all this stuff. First song I really got into was Oh, You Pretty Things, which actually shares a similarity in exclamation point usage. It's oh, exclamation point, you pretty things in the title, which is really cool. But David Bowie always symbolized originality to me, the most unique, rarest of our kind, I think. He had this ability to, every decade or even half a decade sometimes, to reinvent not only his sound, his look, his image, him personally, get better as an artist. And not many people can do that as they get older. That's something that dies off, I think, as people get older. The dream dies off, you lose the child sense of wonderment, and that never died off with him. And he was always, I actually, the last album I did, Too Weird to Live, I wanted to mimic how David Bowie, he had a band and all this stuff, but how he presented himself on covers. And I didn't want to hide behind some other image on a cover. I wanted to put myself on it and use that in the most theatrical sense, in like an homage to David Bowie. So he has had an immense influence on me, and will always continue to do so, because there's just endless music that you can go back to, and it's so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I just think he's had such an influence today. If you look at all the artists today in terms of what they do on stage and just changing their sound up. This new album he has, which was also influenced by Kendrick Lamar, similar to yours, which I think is really interesting, actually. So there's like a little, tie-in, and neither one would you expect. Yeah, and I also wanted to talk about just, the Death of a Bachelor and like the meaning of the title and where that came from.
Yeah, that came from, that song came from me wanting to kill off the old me. In so many words.
Very Bowie-like.
Yeah, exactly, right, exactly. Reinvent myself. Because I already felt like a new artist. I felt like a new person. And I wanted to explore that more. I was like, what does that mean to me? How do I express this? And music is my biggest catalyst. So writing that song, I didn't know it was going to be the title of the album at that point. But this was almost the most important song up to that point. One of the last ones I wrote for the album. And being able to talk about that, I used to be this one person. And it's not that I love or hate him, but he needs to die off because I'm not that person anymore. And so being able to put that into words in a song just is so cathartic for me. And it's just a necessary step in moving forward. And instead of calling it like Brendon Moves Forward, I decided to call the album Death of a Bachelor. Like, put that bittersweet note on it. Like I'm killing off the old ego, Yeah.
Do you have any hint on where you're going to go for the next album, or are you just in tour mode right now?
I'm in tour mode right now, but I'm always writing. Even this morning, I wrote down a couple lyrics. Like, I'm always doing something. I don't necessarily write a full song every day, but I do something. I try to do something creative every day. Whether it's, if I have a breakfast with a friend and he tells me a joke and I like one of the lines in it, that actually ended up in one of my songs on this album. My friend, we were hanging out, partying, we were a little bit drunk, and he said, he's like, well, I don't think as drunk I am. And I was like, you're brilliant. And he meant to say it because he was just being hilarious. Yeah. But those moments happen, and I write them down, or I make a voice note. Remember this, it's a great lyric, Yeah. And, you have those moments. And then when I'm home and I have more time, I'm able to just sit down, write a beat, compose. So I can bounce around so it never gets stale,
Well, if someone asks a good question today, maybe it can end up in a song.
Sure.
There's a chance.
Why wouldn't it? Yeah. So every interaction is an inspiration for me, so thank you.
So no pressure, guys. We are going to move on to the audience Q&A. So make it really good. We're talking about song lyrics here, okay? Okay.
Hi, Brendon.
Hello.
So I have been listening to Panic at the Disco since 2007. It's been amazing to see how your music style has changed over the years.
Thank you.
So my question is, what new trends in music or music technology are grabbing your attention, and would you consider incorporating it into your work?
That's an awesome question. I've never been asked that, by the way. Thank you. What's your name?
Tiffany.
Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany. That's awesome. Yeah, when I was really getting into production on the last album, but I really kind of hit a stride on this album, and I was spending a lot of time asking my friends who are huge geeks with Logic and Pro Tools and all this gear about what they're using, because a lot of my friends are producing like hip-hop tracks, and that to me is really exciting. So I was asking what they were doing. What I do now is I'm using a lot of plugins because now you don't need to get the hardware. They've somehow figured out, there's been so many awesome advances that you don't have to spend all this money on this hardware that could break. It's way more accessible now, and it's easier to learn. And so I'm able to use all these things to the best of my ability. So I'm using like just filters, and who has great production is Diplo. He's actually a really good example of great production. And why it is because it's simple. He doesn't go too crazy. He spends a lot of time on it, but he doesn't overdo a certain sound, and that's just like the most exciting thing. So I'm trying to do the less is more, and that's really like technologically where I'm headed. I'm trying to just condense all of my ideas and know exactly what I want to use that for an idea, if that makes sense. Cool, thanks.
We're going to take our next question from an online viewer.
Sweet.
So Helen would like to know, which song off the new album was the hardest and longest to write and make?
Okay. I have to think of it for a second. What was the hardest one to write? The most, maybe the most difficult one to finish was, excuse me. I think Emperor's New Clothes actually was a difficult one to finish because I had the ideas in my head, and the more time that went by, it gets more difficult and kind of more diluted in the brain, or convoluted rather, and it's hard to differentiate how the ideas started. So that one, it finished with the bridge because I had everything else written. I had the verses, I had the choruses, and then the bridge, I wanted to do a Queen thing, so that took me a lot of time to study Freddie Mercury and Roger Taylor's writing on harmonies, and to really just kind of grab onto that, and I studied it so long, and then I would casually listen to it just in the background to see how I felt about it. So I was going from really analytical to really emotional, and I had to balance those two out. But that one took me like a month to finish. So I had started writing it at the beginning, and then I didn't finish it till halfway through the album writing process. Yeah.
Another question?
Hello. What's your name?
Lizette.
Lizette, how's it going?
Hi, Brendon.
Hello.
I love you so much.
Thank you.
My question is, was there any specific Frank Sinatra album that you wanted to be reflected on this album?
Ooh, I don't know if it's reflected in this album, but my favorite one is In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. That is just, quintessential Sinatra. It's beautiful. It's sad. It's somber. It's smart. It's emotional. And there's dark moments too, which I always like to incorporate, like a little juxtaposition. That one's really good, but honestly, I'm a sucker for the hits, so I just go to the nothing but the best, greatest hits. Because that's, when I go to a show, I'm like, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Come on. Give me the songs I know. And that's why Sinatra's great, because I know all of them. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, what's your name?
Haley.
Hi, Haley.
I was wondering if there were any specific stories that influenced Don't Threaten Me with a Good Time.
You would ask that. I love it. That whole song is autobiographical. But that took me 10 years to write. I didn't feel I could write a party song until I'd had enough experience partying to be able to use, all of my experiences for that. So, we can go lyric by lyric. I could do a couple. Let's say, who are these people? I just woke up in my underwear. That definitely happened. I was, 17, 18, and I hadn't even really been drinking at that time. I was just kind of hanging out. But I was that kid that if they dared me, they're like, oh, Brendon will do it. And so if they gave me a dare, I'd be like, yep, I'm doing that, and I would totally do it. So I don't even know how I ended up there. I definitely streaked that night, streaked through the neighborhood, and I remember people being outside, or not outside, sorry, inside their houses, but looking outside their windows because I was screaming like a maniac. I was just like, I was running naked at the age of 16, 17, and just everything flying everywhere, and they're just looking out their windows. Oh my goodness! And it must have been a crazier night that I can't really recall because I definitely woke up around my friends in my underwear. They were all clothed, in sleeping bags, but it's like, how did I end up on the carpet in my underwear? That was crazy. But yeah, everything in that song. There's a couple embellishments actually. I haven't had an animal walk through my house, but that's one of the few yet. I have dogs, so I guess that counts. That's a little autobiographical.
2016 resolution.
Yeah. Animal walk through the house, that's it.
The question?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, what's your name?
Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
My question is, are there any songs on the album that directly influenced the cover or vice versa?
So the cover is pretty much influenced by Death of a Bachelor and Good Time. So this is when, this is actually my backyard of my house. And that's my pool. That's not my car. Those are my chairs. That's me on the roof. And there have been plenty of nights where I've thrown parties for friends where I've ended up on the roof. And it's not the most comfortable. Those shingles actually really hurt when you wake up. So I paid the price. But yeah, this is like where a lot of that stuff took place. So this was the setting for me writing this album. This is exactly where I was, what I was looking at most of the time when I was working on music. So I wanted everyone to see, you know, what I saw through the whole process. Actually, just literally what I saw. So there it is. There's my party central. There you go.
Is that blood over there? I mean, what happened to this?
I like to think it's paint.
There you go.
But who knows, man? It might be.
No snitching. No snitching. Okay. Cool.
Talkers get walkers.
Another question?
Hi. Okay. My name is Michelle. So first of all, my favorite record of yours was Too Weird to Live Pray or Die. I actually have a tattoo of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I wanted to know what your favorite record of yours that you've made out of like all the Panic!
Of my albums?
Yeah, which is like your favorite.
It's the cliched answer. It's my new one. It's because, you know, this is like where I found who I really was moving forward. Thank you for the question, by the way. You know, and before that, on the last album, it was Too Weird to Live. I was in love with that. But, you know, that's the exciting bit, you know. But there's still a place in my heart for every previous album. You know, I still have a very special place in my heart for Fever, for Pretty Odd, for Vices. For every one of them, it takes me back. It's almost like a yearbook, you know? It's like when you go back and read comments from your friends, this is what it was. It's, you know, because like I said, I use every experience and interaction with people as an influence for songwriting. I mean, everybody I come in contact with has an influence on what I do. I think that's the same for everybody. It's a butterfly effect, right? So, yeah, thank you.
Hi, Brendon.
Hi.
You said that this album reflects how you change as a person. How did you change as a person? Like, how do you feel this album shows that you're a new person?
Yeah. Thank you. I think the way I felt when I started writing, it took me a while to realize that I wasn't who I used to be. Because in the past, I would, you know, in previous albums, I would kind of fall into the same processes when I was songwriting. Not that that was bad, because I was still trying to create something different. But in terms of the way I was thinking about everything, in terms of the way I approached every situation, whereas before, like I said, my first co-write, you know, you have to step out of your comfort zone. And so I was doing that a lot more, and I was learning much more about myself. So the more that I stepped out, the more I learned about myself, and it just kind of was this thing that kept going up and up, where I just got even happier with who I was. I saw exactly what I wanted to do. I had more of a vision of what I wanted. And that, in turn, you know, reflected in the music. So when I'm talking about certain things, you know, there's even moments. It's not all positive and rainbows and flowers and lollipops. You know, there's moments. There's a song, Emperor's New Clothes, where I'm saying I'm taking back the crown, and that was where I felt, you know, this is mine, and I get to own it. I don't have to feel guilty for this being mine. You know, people don't get to make me feel inferior. That's up to me, and that was a huge learning experience. So being able to have a lyric like that, where I can play an arrogant character, was a big lesson for me. And that's like one of the instances where I really felt I changed. I was a new person. Thank you, by the way, for that question.
Unfortunately, that was the last question, but thanks everyone for coming out. Thanks, Brendon.
Thanks.
That was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Death of a Bachelor is out now.
Appreciate it.